Good morning. I have a
Morning,
very
Doc.
special guest with me today, and it's a special day because it is the first time I'm ever doing a podcast myself. So hopefully my special guest comes on more than just once, and we
Yeah.
have some great stuff to talk to you guys about today. So my biggest thing that I want to do is introduce you guys to Ken. His name is Kenneth Farrow, and he is from Houston, Texas. I met Ken when he was over here playing for the Miami Dolphins, and he was dealing with a few injuries. I met him actually through a former student of mine, James, and we'll surely have James on here because he is a wealth of knowledge between nutrition and grounding and breathing and so many
Absolutely.
good things. So I'm definitely going to have James on because he's going to definitely talk things that people probably don't even think about most of the time.
Right.
And Ken became a very good friend of mine over time. We built a very special relationship. So now that he's back in Texas, we still keep in touch very often. And I'll let Ken do the rest of his introduction. So go ahead, Ken. I'll give you the floor.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Doc, been amazing. Met like she said, met in Miami while I was spending some time with the Miami Dolphins, and it was cool because I think throughout my life it's always been just big connections of people just always put me um, in in connections with the right people, and like you said, you mentioned James. I met James back in 2015 when I came to Miami to train for pro day, and we kept in touch, and I got out there and he was like, you were number one. He was like, you got to go see Dr. Marron, she's going to get you right. So yeah, that's kind of how that all our whole relationship began, and you've been nothing short of amazing, all the stuff that you've been able to do for me, my family, over Zoom sessions, helping my granny out with shoulders, and
Yep.
now helping my brother out. So brother had an ACL tear, so he's gonna be seeing you quite a bit over the next few months.
Yep.
But yeah, like you said, I grew up in Hurst, Texas, Fort Worth area. Moved to Houston for college, played college ball there, and then spent some time with the Chargers first couple of years, and Dolphins, Patriots. Been in the AAF, XFL, just kind of football has taken me all over the place. So I've got to meet so many great people along the way. That's one special thing about the game, right? You can't do it by yourself. You have to have so many people helping you throughout the week to get prepared for a game, and I've been blessed to have the right people in my life to just help me live the dream I wanted to live of playing football for so long. And people don't understand that it takes a whole team, a whole village of people to continue living that dream, whether it's getting your body right, whether it's people to talk to mentally, things like that. So it's
When
been
did
an
you,
awesome journey.
when did you decide to actually in your life know that you wanted to be, a professional football player?
Yeah, so it started pretty young for me. I grew up in a football family. My great grandma, um, they used to take trips to Chicago from Irving, Texas back in the day to watch the Bears back in the '80s because Mike
So awesome.
Singletary is, yeah, Mike Singletary is family, so they used to make that long trip up to Chicago back in the late '80s. And so football was just always on the TV for me growing up in the family. My uncles played it, everybody played it. So, um, yeah, it started early. I started kindergarten, or I started Pee Wee when I was 6 years old, and the little league that we were in, they did really cool things back in Irving. We used to take trips to Dallas Cowboy Stadium and play during halftime. That happened for our team twice, and I tell people all the time it was one of those trips where I think it was the second trip I went on where I was 7 years old, and I was kind of to the age where I knew what we were doing because we had did it once before,
Right.
2 years before, and just having that experience that young, being in a stadium that big, and all the fans screaming and all, I just knew coming out of that. I actually got Tim Brown's autograph that day,
It's
and then
amazing.
walked out. Yeah, and then as we were walking out, a lady asked me for my autograph, and I tell people all the time that's when it kind of went for full circle for me, where I felt like I was there already. Right, I got an autograph as that young. Then the lady asked for me.
Ooh,
I was
that
like, oh
gives me
yeah,
the
I'm
chills.
this is what I'm doing. Yeah, this is what I'm doing. So
That's
I hope
awesome.
I come across that lady one day because that was one of those things where as a little kid you have an interaction like that, and that was huge.
That is huge. I mean, football was always a big part of my life too. So to even have you on, or to even work with a couple NFL players in my career this early on, has been a blessing. It's just been so fun. I played Pee Wee too in the beginning, but that was it.
Yeah.
Always and forever a Jets fan, which is terrible. We'll never win.
Yeah, they're having a
I
tough
think
time right
KD
now.
makes fun of me all the time for it. My brother was a huge Bears fan. He still is to this day because of Coach Dicka. So
Yeah. Yeah.
big fan. But yes, I'm so blessed to have you on. So Ken, let's talk about a few things. Let's talk about, in the physical therapy perspective, the injuries that you've dealt with over your career, how you've dealt with them, and kind of how it's brought you to where you are today.
Yeah. So, I think that's been one of the cooler things because playing the game of football, you have to get ridiculously in tune with your body, more than an average person. Same with UFC, same with, most sports.
Right.
Um, and like I said, the people I've come across throughout my career has just been just an overflow of knowledge and learning how the body really works and how it can really heal itself and the exercise that you can use no matter what injury you've had to bring your body back to 100%. I think it's been the coolest thing to learn and things like that. So um, yeah, I've had ankle surgeries. Had an ankle reconstruction surgery. Had a broke shoulder blade. Had to get plates and screws in that. And so, I think those two alone are, 12, 13 months of where you're just doing nothing but rehab and trying to get back to your, 100%. And like I said, the I've been with PTs that kind of did a great job, but then you start to run into people who are really experts at what they do, and that's kind of what's always drawn me to people. And people have close relationships. It's the passion you got to put into football and the time and the dedication. You start to be able to identify people that have that same passion and that same dedication in whatever field that they're in. And
Right.
so, I've been lucky enough to meet quite a few people, and I can definitely say you're at the top of that list. I walked into your office one day and you knew exactly what I was going to tell you just by taking a few steps with my shirt off. You were able to
Yeah.
identify stuff. And so I was like, okay, yeah, she definitely knows
This girl
all of the
knows.
things she needs to know. Yeah. Yeah. So it's been cool just being able to learn from people like you and stuff that I didn't know because I was just too busy playing, but got more aware of my body. So
Well,
it's been a good journey.
especially I know, but the people that are going to be listening maybe don't. Your injuries weren't all just from football too, unfortunately.
Right.
Right.
Oh
So
yeah.
you're dealing with, just not on the field, you're dealing with life on the outside of that as well. And
Yeah.
how that affects your career. Because I remember you telling me when you were, they were talking to you about surgery, and then, they were kind of pushing that on you. Tell us a little bit about that situation.
The shoulder and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it was definitely that happened. I fractured it pretty bad, like my first preseason game, my rookie year, and you know it was something that at first I've had shoulder issues before, right? And so I thought it was okay, maybe it's a labrum or something like that, and you know start doing labrum rehab, and I feel it start to really aggravate all the ligaments and things like that. And it wasn't until a little bit later on that I found out that this is not labrum, this is a broken bone.
And were you
And
playing through that
so
too?
yeah, yeah. So it happened the first preseason game. I sat out for 2 weeks, and as an undrafted rookie, it's like preseason. That's your chance to really make a
You
splash and
shine.
do something. Yeah, and so I had a really good first preseason game, and it happened the last play of the game. A guy fell on me, kind of going to the ground, and that thing snapped back there. And so for the next 2 weeks, I couldn't really raise my arm. And so the fourth preseason game comes around, and my coach was like, "Hey, man, you got to get out there, show us something." We had a couple injuries that it kind of opened up some opportunities, and so I went out there and played about a half, had a good half, and then for the rest of that season, it was just really trying to get through and just kind of work with that pain and figuring out how to protect that shoulder and still play the game. And then, like we've talked about, I also was in a crazy car crash with my wife week 2, and thank God that everybody made that out alive. But that was another thing. A seatbelt on my hip bone. I thought my hip bone was almost broke.
Done.
So it was, yeah, the whole rookie year was just, I mean, it was definitely having to figure out what can I do from a physical therapy standpoint, right? What can I do during the week to try to get me through every day of practice? Because it was tough. So yeah, it was definitely. And then, like you said, I get to the end of the season, and people were thinking it was my labrum, and I had to wind up go getting a second opinion to see a
And
CT scan.
they still didn't like even do any scans on you at that point?
No, it was just MRIs, and I think that's, unfortunate part. There's just, there's so many players on the team, right? I
Right.
think that happens a lot. And it's not to, bash anybody in that particular organization or anything like that. I think it's just, that's kind of the culture of football, right? They're trying to get guys in, they're trying to get guys out. And especially if you're not, one of the top notch, number 1 draft picks or things like
Right.
that, they're trying to, kind of hurry up through some of those processes. So that was something that was missed. And, like I said, I've been lucky enough to be around good people throughout my career. And I got to reach out to one of my doctors from University of Houston, and flew in. He did a CT scan. The
Right
bone
away.
was broken in half. Yeah. He was like, oh, yeah, this is a shoulder blade. So, yeah, that was a crazy situation.
It's such a bizarre, I mean, it's not in football, with trauma and hitting and stuff like that, but it's such a bizarre, because you're not generally just having pain right there, right? So you talk about like
Right.
that referred pain,
Yeah.
and it's it's just amazing how the body, you know, responds in situations with trauma. So
Yeah.
you're a trooper though. You are
Yeah.
every injury that you and I have ever gone over, you have always tried to fight your way to find the correct person or find an answer because you weren't necessarily getting it the way you needed to. And
Right.
I find in my practice, that's the bulk of almost half the patients that I see, is that they've tried X, Y, and Z, been taken down a ridiculous road, that makes no sense whatsoever. And then again, they still don't have an answer at the end of the road. So
Yeah.
I think as a professional athlete, them hearing this, but even, to the general population and also to my other professional athletes, you sometimes in the healthcare world, you have to like fight to
Yeah.
get an
And
answer or learn.
yeah, and I think that goes to, like I said, it's the people that I've run into, and you can tell that they've been extremely passionate, extremely dedicated to what they do. And so they have, I think, what separates some of the best PTs or some of the best football players or some of the best whatever. And I think it all comes down to how much time you spend in it, but also how much knowledge you require about your craft is what ultimately is going to separate you. And I think that's one thing that blew my mind away when I first came in with our first session. It was like I was hearing stuff that I'd never heard, and I'm 26, 27 years old and playing professional football, and I'm in a physical therapy session with you, and you're telling me things that I haven't heard. It's like, so there's always so much more to learn. There's always so much more in any field.
And even in my perspective, I'm still a student. I'm always learning, and that because every time you and I talk, there's something else that we go over. Rather, that's like when we popped your grandma's shoulder in.
Yeah.
There's so many
Yeah.
different things that I learn on a day-to-day basis. But when I have students come in, or I have anyone, going down the healthcare route, or even if it's not even the PT field, I'm always saying, like, you have to be crazy and insane about it.
Yeah.
Literally, like I dove into it at the age of 14. Yeah, I was just cleaning tables at an office, but like you say, it's day in and day out. It's your obsession. It's it's all day, every day. It's all you think about. You go to bed and you're reading an article, and stuff like that is what it makes you a master of your craft. And just like as a professional athlete, you've been doing it since you were a kid. This is what you've been doing. So going off of that, I know you and I talk a lot, but what do you feel like you're going to do when you're done with football? Where do you see yourself going now that you have, a little bit of a passion going on right now?
Yeah, there's definitely, you know, a couple different avenues that have kind of revealed themselves to me, right? I try to really um, just go, day to day and really, whatever I have on my mind, whatever, it's in my heart, I try to act on it. I think that's been, what's gotten me to this point in my life, being able to play football for so long, things like that. And, right now we're doing a lot of stuff with our nonprofit, right? Working with kids, mentoring kids. But we're also, so I think on that side of it, that's something that you can't get away from, right? Yeah, I
When
grew
did
up
when
as
did
a
you
five.
when did you start that?
That was 20. So that was during my ankle surgery. I was on IR. I didn't have anything to do. And, I was well aware of, those are some of the toughest times as an athlete, because it's not just your physical surgery. You think about, if I'm an athlete and I'm building for years and years, and then you have something that sets you back to where you can't walk again, mentally, that's, a huge roadblock in itself. So,
Right.
so that's when we put all that together when I was on IR for my ankle surgery. And I think the biggest thing that I got out of that time was, man, as I remember when I was little and I was a kid looking up to football and I was watching all these things, as a young kid, that was something that I fixated on. I spent all of my time on. My mom brought home a book from a storage, and I got like 500 cards and all types of stuff. So now, as an adult and having played the game, you realize that, man, there are so many kids out there that want to do what you're doing, want to be in your position. And so now it's about, how can I get with these kids and give them tools to, not only get better at the game, but give them tools to get better at life, to maybe avoid situations that, without having that some type of guidance or some type of mentor they don't have. So, I got to train some kids this summer, right? So that was super fun for me. That was my first time doing that. So really, yeah, just sculpting the youth is something that I definitely see myself doing. I got an 8-year-old sibling all the way up to a 24-year-old sibling. So, I feel like I'm, definitely been a leader for them, as best as I can, to show them how to navigate through life. So that's one side of it. And then I think this right here, things like this, bringing light to some of the situations that guys got to go through playing this sport, is going to be huge, as a for the last 2 or 3 years, I've constantly found myself in situations on teams where I'm having talks with guys, and we're talking about, how are you getting through some of the mental challenges and things like that of playing the game, or injuries or setbacks. And, it's something that's, I feel, is definitely needed, because it's not something that gets talked about. So I'm just super passionate about um, helping people get to their best selves, in any way that is, whether it's teammates, whether it's, kids that are trying to do football, whether it's just your average everyday person that is looking to live a healthier life, whether it's food. I've got to learn so much by really trying to maximize what I've had to do, um, from a body standpoint, to, get out on the field and be at my best self. It came with so many things. It came with nutrition. It came with mental practices to clear your head, to be in the moment, to be present. I think all those things relate to what anybody has to go through to reach, whatever goal it is in their life. So just bringing some of those practices to life that helped me get to where I want to be is, a huge passion of mine.
It's pretty amazing because not many professional athletes, but there are many, dedicate their time to like charities or, nonprofit organizations. And I think it's just beautiful, the ones that do, because it gives younger kids, even just general population, people that don't know what they're doing and maybe feel like they're the only person going through it. They're really not.
Right.
When I remember my first professional athlete in my office, and I've worked with plenty of professional athletes under other, providers' care as I was learning or a student. And I never understood, like, I thought that professional athletes just never dealt with anything that, someone like me would be going through mentally.
Yeah.
Because and just honest to God, that's how the general population looks at it. They look at you guys as stars. They look at you guys as, you have it all made, you have it all figured out. And I think that's really cool, is that you bring that to light, that you show that, everyone's going through something.
Right.
Everyone you meet is going through something, whether that's the richest man in the world, whether that's the poorest man in the world. Everyone is going through something. And you're right, like, it's not talked about often. And I think you bring up a good point, because this is a big thing that's going on in the world today, is talking about mental
Mhm.
health. And I see it daily. I think sometimes I'm almost a psychologist rather than a physical therapist in my office, because I I spend a lot of time trying to talk people, almost off the ledge sometimes with a severe
Yeah.
injury. Like, hey, this is where you're at, but this is where we're going to get you.
Yeah.
You gotta work with me every day. If that means you got to text me, call me, email me. Not many doctors are willing to do that, because their day ends at 5 o'clock and that's it.
Yeah.
So we talk about energy, you and I, and James, and it's something that I've been working through as a professional, which is try not to carry a lot of that energy back to my home. And I know that's going
Right.
to take me time, and I read a lot of books, and I'm trying to work on that. But you as a person on a team, on a professional team, you're in the locker room. That's what you talk about. There's, you bring on certain energies, and people either absorb it, or they allow it to let them, either absorb it and take it, or they let it bounce off and try
Yeah.
and give uh, the advice that person needs. And that's been something I've been, I don't want to say struggling with, but something I'm learning as I'm going through this, the setting that I created, one-on-one and very personalized. I didn't realize I'd also be taking on this emotional side of things. And just like you
Yeah.
said, as a team player, it takes a team. So sometimes it's talking to the family member that they have with them, having them come into the office so maybe they can understand a little bit better what's going on, to be more supportive. But me trying to make sure that I don't take that back home has been something that I'm trying to work on big time. Because sometimes I'll sit in my car and I'm just like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Well, nah,
yeah,
that's, no, I'm sorry. That's one of the things that, we've talked about too. It's those when you have somebody that's helping your body heal, helping you heal, it's, we've talked about it's always more than just physical.
100%.
So, there's so many emotional things that people carry on, um, and that's stress, emotional, trauma. And I think that's why I'm really passionate about, the guidance part of the kids, because a lot of my problems I had to deal with were childhood traumas that you work through as an adult. And it's not necessarily that specific event that messes you up. It's what emotions around that event trigger you when you get older, and you subconscious of you don't even know it. So
Nope.
I think that's yeah, like you said, you're working on people, and you're trying to get them better. And a lot of the physical ailments or whatever that they're going through, um, it's almost like a tool. I found that as I've been able to go through injuries, you start to learn how to translate that to life, translate that to some of the emotional things you're going through. And it takes a while though, because I think there's a lot of lessons that people learn when they go through any type of traumatic injury or surgery or things like that. So um, yeah, I mean, you're dealing with one-on-one people, like you said. You've texted me protocols when I needed them at 9:30 at night, 10 o'clock at night when something went off. So it's just a lot. You're giving your everything to a person to help them heal physically, and like you said, that comes with a lot more things than people think.
But that's also why I love it, because people, know that they can just come to me and they feel safe. And sometimes just taking that off their plate, the feeling of like, oh my goodness, or, you know, what's going to happen, they know that, hey, I have Doc in my corner. And if at
Yeah.
least I have her, I have something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I pride myself on that. And I do, I get very happy when previous patients of mine or current, you know, patients of mine, they'll reach out and say, hey, you know, I think I did something, or whatever. I know that someone's trusted me enough to put that in their life, and that, you know, that means more to me, because that was ultimately why I did this in the first place, you know.
Yeah.
So it wraps back around. So, you
Absolutely.
know, and like, look at you, you've even though you've left Florida, you're still like, oh, something happened, let me call Doc, because at
Yeah.
least you know you're gonna get an answer. I'll always answer you. You trust me with your whole heart, and we get it done. So,
Yeah. And
you know, if more providers could be like that, I think we'd have less of this problem in the healthcare field, you know.
oh man, yeah. And that's, you hit it on the head. I think, one of the things that separates people that are in whatever field they're on, and especially you, like you said, I've been able to hit you up at any time. And I think that personal connection is something that in the healthcare system, and it falls into so many different realms of
Of course.
where people just kind of go through the motions of doing what their job description is and not realizing that you got to connect with people at a different level no matter what you're going through to really maximize anything that you want to do. There's nothing that can be done if everybody's just at surface level. And so um yeah, I mean, that's like you said, that would definitely reshape how we look at the healthcare world if people really took time to get to know their clients and not just give them pills and send them on their way and things like that. So I mean, that's a huge part of it.
Yep. So it is a little bit of a broken system, we'll say that, but
Yeah.
I do believe that there are people out there that are trying, you know, to make it a little bit better. You know, thinking outside the box, doing things outside the box. So I have hope, and especially me doing stuff like this, I hope that like I get students to kind of come along and find their own way to do it as well. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing, just like you're doing with your nonprofit. You know, you're teaching these kids how to be as a you know, whether they go into a professional athlete position or just in life, you know, how to be a better
Yeah.
man, how to be a better boyfriend, son, husband, whatever it's going to be.
Absolutely.
And I don't think a lot of people talk about it enough. I mean, you introduced me to reading Dr. Joe Dispenza's book,
Yeah.
and that opened up a lot of things for me. And I kept going down that rabbit hole of his books and stuff like that, because we were talking about energy when you had mentioned reading his book. So I actually have a question when we do the questions coming up about your top three books. So let's go
Oh,
into
nice.
questions as we talk about it. So what would you say your best top three books you could recommend to someone would
I
be?
would say definitely the one I told you, right? Joe Dispenza, the Becoming Supernatural. It just talks about how powerful it is to really slow down and absorb some of and really be conscious of what we're thinking on a day-to-day basis. I think a lot of people, that was something that opened the gate for me, right? All these physical things that I had to heal from, surgeries, rehabs, things like that. It opened the gate for me to you got to go to a different place to get through some of the surgeries or play through some of the pain, right? And it takes you straight to the mental. And there's so many things that I've been able to block out physically and play with, where you have a break from playing and you realize, like, dang, I was doing this. How was I doing this? And it's mental. You tell yourself that it doesn't bother you, and really nothing matters after you convince yourself of that. And
Right.
so that book goes into, it goes super deep on how people have changed their lifestyle up by being aware of the thoughts that constantly come in, or not even thoughts, right? We have so many things around us in today's, society that can throw you off and kind of get you going down a negative thought track or things like that. That's a great book. The other one of my friends just recommended this to me a few months ago. I'm listening to the audiobook right now. I'm about finished, but it's been it's been it's called Power versus Force. What's the author? Who's the author on that? Power versus Force. I can't think of the author. I'll
I'll
definitely
look
it'll
I'll
come
look
to
it up
me.
because I'm gonna put it on the bottom of the link when we upload
Yeah.
everything. So we'll get it up there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Power versus Force, and that talks about. I mean, this goes deep into kind of some of the psychological. You talk about energies. It talks about what does happiness, what does acceptance, what does um, grief, what do all these things, how do they have a effect on people? And it's been very eye-opening to hear. It talks about and like the totality of a society, um, when people are quick to judge, when people are quick to criticize instead of help construct. It talks about all the consequences of that, and it goes through all these different emotions really that we go through as human beings. That was a great one. um and then the other one, probably one of the first ones I read, and it's funny because I think this is one of James's favorite books, but The Power of the Subconscious Mind. So a lot of all my books have been super internal, right, mental books, that I feel like I've gotten the most from. And The Power of the Subconscious Mind is, kind of along those same lines about how we don't know everything that we take in, right? Our subconscious mind records almost everything and knows almost everything, right? Because you're not conscious of it, and nothing goes without being recorded at some level. And it's something my granny used to always tell me. She was huge on respect growing up, right? You didn't disrespect anybody,
Right.
and my great grandparents, and just growing up in that environment, that definitely guided me down the right path. And one thing she always told me, she was like, I don't care who's talking to you, you give them respect and listen to it. You never know when something's going to come up later that maybe you didn't pick up. And so I was talking with one of my friends not too long ago, and we were talking about subconscious and things like that, and how powerful the brain is, and how we really don't have access to being able to use it all. But that's a perfect example of a conversation you can have with somebody, right? Whether it's a mentor, whether it's a coach, whether it's a doctor, whoever. And years later, something will pop in your mind like, oh wow, that's what this meant. And it's like that thought that you really didn't have a full grasp on, something sparks that thought, and now you have a deeper meaning of what that statement was or what that piece of advice was. So it talks about how to kind of clear your mind and be clear with everything that you hear, and listen to every word, and just how powerful that is, to be able to recall things like that and have your mind in a clear headspace to be able to pull on that.
It's very hard. When I read uh, Becoming Supernatural, the way he meditates and stuff like that, it's difficult. And I never really was someone who did that enough. And I'll tell you what, that's been the hardest thing, is like trying to understand the subconscious mind.
Yeah, you
But I'll
can't.
get I
Yeah,
know,
you can
and
get
I'll
there.
get I'll get so frustrated, like, I'll think something, and then I like try to put a blame on it, and then it's just, you try and put something on it, and you're like, okay, why am I going back to doing that again? It's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
it's just crazy. But you're right.
Patterns.
Something. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, patterns. We engrave some of these actions or whatever it is. After you do it for so long, it becomes a habit, and then it talks about in that book how it becomes one of your personal traits if you
Yep.
continually go down these habitual processes.
Yep.
So it's hard to break habits. So,
Yep.
but once you figure out how to do that, man, it's sky's the limit on anything you want to do.
It's
So
true. That's true. All right. So I got another question for you. Who are the top three most influential people in your life?
top three most influential people. I definitely I had I so I saw this one. I was like, I definitely gotta I gotta group my family in there as one, right? It takes a village to, get a little kid right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've got my dad was my head coach growing up from the time I was 6 to like 12 or 13, and it wasn't the oh that's a head coach's son relationship. It was hey I'm gonna give it to you as real as it gets because you need to be prepared for anything. So
Yep.
from that standpoint, that was huge. And then my mom, seeing my mom go to work and then be on the computer doing school until 3 a.m. and work getting back up at 6:30 to that was work ethic and graduating at the top of her class when she went back to school as an adult. And just seeing her work ethic and just her sacrifice for us to be able to do things, she was huge. And then my granny, like I said, I mentioned that earlier. um, I was with her almost every day growing up, and just she was one of the ones that it didn't matter how old I was, she was gonna give it to me straight, give it to me real, and prepare you for life. I think that's something that a lot of because working with kids and things like that, the world we live in today, if they got a phone, they're getting exposed to
If,
everything, right? And you
yep.
don't know when they're getting exposed to it, and so
No.
my granny was kind of ahead of her time, right? I didn't have an iPhone in my hand, but any situation that came up, she was explaining to me. So that gave me a lot of guidance. So I grouped all of them as one, and then one big one was Coach Flood. He was one of my Pee Wee coaches when I moved from Irving to a different side of Fort Worth, HEB. Um, and he was, Irving, my little league that I played in Irving, there was, man, we probably had about 20 or 25 guys from my little league that wind up going D1 when we looked up 15 years later, and all guys were A&M and Oklahoma and Notre Dame and all over the place. So that was a little league that was kind of stacked, and I got to HEB, and um, my first game I was killing it. And one of the things that I remember Coach Flood and Coach Nick telling me constantly is like, stay humble and hungry. And that's kind of something that stuck with me because I got to a new place. I was being having a bunch of success in football in junior high and high school, and that was something that never left me to no matter what's going on, to stay humble and just stay looking to achieve more. And so I think that's a big part of it too, being able to know where you're at in life and not get too big of a head and things like that. So because it's football, I tell kids all the time, I mean, perfect example right now, you're going through COVID and the game has been taken away from everybody, and that
Yeah.
didn't have anything to do with injury. Or at the end of the day, you got definitely got to have a head on your shoulders, because this game is not the only thing in life. And so yeah, humble, staying humble throughout that whole process is something that is huge for kids.
Okay, who's your third?
Third, oh yeah, those two. Third, coach, coach. Um, I'd probably say my sister, my little sister. She's been, we, grew up, and you do anything for your siblings, right? You do anything. And I went to, as I started getting throughout my football career and kind of just getting so just locked into that world, right? And being able to reconnect lately, not lately, it's been a while now, but having that time off of football and being able to spend so much more time with her, where we're both kind of in the space that we're at. She's been undoubtedly, as hard as I've worked to get to where I'm at, she's been working equally as hard in everything that she does. She was going to school and working at night shifts at a restaurant for 4 or 5 years. And she actually just got in PT school. I told her that we
Did
got to set
she?
up yeah, she just started
Aw,
applying for that, and she starts soon. So I told her that we're gonna have a talk soon with you, and be able to give her some of the gems and some of the knowledge that
absolutely.
you've gone through. But yeah, she's really amazed me. These last couple of years that we've gotten to grow a lot closer. Just where she's at, just the things that she was reading books when, this is recent news, that she was reading books when she was like 14, 15 years old that I started reading when I was 23. And so she's just she blows my mind every
She's
time we talk.
ahead of the
Oh
time.
yeah, and I didn't even know it. Oh yeah. So she's just, I mean, she's been a huge inspiration to me. But that's, like I said, I grew my family, and there's so many people. Being able to spend time with my brother and sister, seeing them, so much inspiration around. That's, I've been lucky to have people like that in my life and family and things like that. So
I think what's so great about you and even KD, I'll have Kenyon on once the season's over, but
yeah.
you guys are so big on family, and that's what I grew up with. To this day, my family is everything, and I think that's super. I don't want to say cool, but it's super cool that you guys really believe like your family is the most influential part of your life. And I think that's really, really, really nice because you don't see too many people say that. If people
Yeah.
get awards or something like that, they, say, who do they thank? So I think it's actually really, really refreshing that you guys are so big on family and so connected to your family as well. So, all right, let's go into a really good question I got. So this is from a athlete of mine. He's a professional MMA athlete, and he transitioned kind of like how you did from NFL to XFL. In the MMA world, there's UFC, there's PFL, there's Bellator, and he had just transitioned from one to the other. And he wanted
Mhm.
to know what opportunities disappeared when you went from the NFL to the XFL, or did it move smoother for you? And did people treat you differently when you went from the NFL to the XFL?
Um,
Did you find that you had more playing time than when you were in the NFL? Did you find that, that's a positive? Did you find that, you lost certain opportunities like,
right,
getting
right.
your name out there, whatever?
Right. Yeah. No, I think definitely just because of you know, the platform, right? The platform compared from NFL
Right,
to, the smaller league.
right,
Um, I think that's definitely something that, takes a hit. But, honestly, I've always kind of been pretty laid back, and not really, too much, in the mix of anything, going on really. So I was I would say definitely there's a from a business standpoint, from like a sponsorship standpoint, things like that definitely kind of go away as you leave that platform. When you're in that NFL, which I'm sure he's familiar, being in one of the top, MMA leagues, that comes with, a bunch of different opportunities, a bunch of different, kind of higher platforms
right.
to be able to have access to. So that's something that definitely changes. But, I mean, the cool thing about it is it's not so much about, the platform you're on. It if you can identify, who the good people are that are going to be around you in any setting, and so I think, when we were up in Seattle in the XFL, um, you know there was people that, um, for example, my running back coach, we still talk to this day. He got us connected with one of his longtime friends, and they've been doing nonprofit work out in California, and now they're helping us set up some things with our nonprofit. And that, I, the worth of our relationship to this day, you can't put a price on it. And so I look at that situation, and I came out of that situation where what seems to be a smaller platform, what seems to be opportunities lost, I was able to go into it right, open minded, and create a great relationship that is benefiting not only us but him as well. I've been able to tell him things about, some of my healing processes. Um, CBD is one of our big ones. I've been able to put him onto his family, and so, it's all about being in the moment and in whatever situation you're in, and find the best out of it, because there's always good things. It's just, can you see it? Are you in a space enough to see it? And I think that's been one of the things that I was able to learn quickly, and I think I benefited from it. So, not even though I wasn't in the NFL, um, it didn't matter, right? You're around good people. You're around people that want to see you succeed, and if you can connect with the right people, then you could get a opportunity that, I don't have any connections like I have. Of course, I have connections from the NFL that to this day we still talk, but I mean, that one in the XFL was, powerful for what I have going on in my
Right.
life right now. So it's
Right.
all about what you can see and whatever opportunity that you're in.
Seeing the good.
Yeah,
That's good.
absolutely.
Okay, so another question I had for you was what struggles did you go through getting into the NFL if you did?
Oh man. So I mean, there's definitely, I think obviously the number one struggle is going to be injuries, right? You're
Right.
constantly, as a football player, you're constantly trying to keep yourself in tip top shape. Injury obviously sets you back. That's one of the things that we've talked about with the ankle surgery. It's like you work for years and years. You Every year you get a little bit better. Every year you get a little bit better, and then you have a year where you have a surgery and you have to learn how to walk again. It's like you're going back to square one, and
Right.
so you have to really rebuild yourself. So that was definitely a challenge for me getting in. My senior year, I had sprained my ankle really bad towards the end of it. I had to miss probably the last 3 games of my senior year. Tried to play in the last two, but probably some of the biggest games in our careers of my time in college, and had to miss them because of a sprained ankle. And then that kind of bled into going into that preparation for the draft and things like that. I didn't get to go to the Reese's Senior Bowl. That kind of snowballed into no combine invite, so you got to do pro day, and you just miss out on opportunities. But I always say it doesn't, even with the opportunities missed, right? If you can stay focused and do what you need to do to get to where you want to go, it's just going to be a different path, and that's something that translates to, a lot of things in life. You might miss something, you might have a setback. That road there is still there. It's just a different road now because you got to, fight through different obstacles. So that was a big one. My senior year really took me took a hit to kind of just draft stock and things like that going into it, injured. And so that was a big one. That ankle towards the end of my senior year and trying to get into the NFL. But like I said, you overcome it, you keep pushing, and things worked out. So
You're such a positive person. It's great.
gotta
It's so
be.
great. No, yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so we kind of answered another one, but I want to ask you this. What has been your biggest inspiration over the past year? 2020 has been a little crazy with COVID and stuff like that. So what's been your biggest inspiration and what has kind of brought you through to see some sort of positivity this year?
Like you said, 2020 been absolutely nuts. The pandemic and craziness going on. Like I said earlier, I've had the time to slow down. I think this has kind of been for everybody. People have got the time to slow down, and definitely my biggest inspiration is my little brother and my dad moved down here to Houston this past year, and I haven't been playing football this year, so I've got to spend so much more time with them. And so I would definitely say time with, goes back to
Your
time
family.
with my family. I've been able to get my grandma on things like CBD, things like CMOS, things to help her with, what she's doing from a health standpoint. Me and my dad and my stepmom, we've been working out. I've got my, mom and my stepdad, things to work out. So it's been fun being able to just take everything that I've kind of gone through these past, few years of playing football, right, from a mental, physical standpoint, and just being able to share it with the family and just spending time with them. I think that's something that we don't, going through this whole COVID, going through this shutdown. I think people are really realizing that you get something from spending time with your family. You get
Oh
something
yeah.
from spending time with people that you love and people that love you. And so that's been definitely an inspiration, man. They've pushed me to another level of one to learn more, one to get involved in more, for the sake of being able to help them with what they're going through. So I've got nutrition, and I got a Southwest medicinal plants, right? Herbs and nutrition up here. Some books that I'm reading just to
That's
try
awesome.
to help them with what they're going through. But yeah, definitely being able to spend time with the family lately has been huge for me.
Okay. So one last question. Now this one's kind of out there and I'm not sure how to go about asking this. So the topic was steroids in professional athletes. Is it something that you've had to struggle with in the NFL, and what's their take on it / the long-term effect that you may be seeing on other athletes?
So I've never had anything to do with steroids, right? I don't never really I think back in high school, they had all the pre-workouts and stuff.
Right.
I took creatine one time and threw up, and I was like, yeah, I'm never taking any pre-workout again. So as far as anything like that, I think muscle milk was the furthest I went. So
Oh geez.
that's not something that is really I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I mean, guys get popped for tests, all the time, but even a lot of the tests that get popped for it, it's people don't understand that. I've been in locker rooms where guys have been taking the same supplement for 5 or 6 years, and then one year something in that supplement gets added to what they're testing for, and then boom, next year they're suspended, and they've been taking this thing for 6 years and passed tests on it before. So yeah, I'm not too familiar with the steroid world. I've tried to stay away from that as good as possible.
Of course. Well, I think this came from actually another professional MMA athlete. I think their thing was, in football, like you're against big guys, especially as a running back, right? You get tackled by some big dudes. So, their thing is in the MMA world, if you got someone now, they don't allow steroids, especially in MMA. And because if you have someone who's natural fighting someone in a cage who's on something, I mean, you could kill someone, right? So
yeah.
I think his question was kind of like, I guess if you've seen like someone get like super injured because someone had popped dirty on something like that, and like, do you notice stuff like that at all?
Yeah, no, that's it's so hard just because there's so many guys, right?
Right.
Like I said, I know it's definitely out there. Guys have gotten popped for it, but
Right.
I think it's just it's already a violent game, and with football, it's different from UFC. You've kind of opened my eyes to. I watched it, right? I watched boxing, I watched UFC growing up a little bit, but being able to kind of hear what they really go through, right, is kind of drawn me closer to pay attention to some of that stuff. And that is something that you take steroids as a UFC fighter, as a MMA fighter, boxing, you're one-on-one, so when you talk about being able to hurt somebody, like you really can, mess somebody up because it's one-on-one. There's no other factors involved, right?
Right. There's not a ball in between.
There's not a ball in between. There's not 10 other guys. So it's hard to, really pinpoint guys who are, oh, he's definitely, there's so much going on in the game of football. But like you said, but the MMA and the boxing world, I was just talking with one of my teammates from Seattle the other day. And, I've always known that from the standpoint of violence, right? How violent is the game, how crazy is the game, or whatever sport that you're in, I've always knew it was kind of, MMA, right? UFC type of fighting, and then boxing, and then football. But lately, like I said, having conversations with you about it, those, I mean, that is the top of the top. You're training for 8 to 10 months, or maybe less time than that, anywhere from 3 to 8 months for a fight. And it's, what, 4 rounds of 5 minutes?
It can, the championships are 5.
Yeah.
Five for 5.
You're pouring months and months of work into 25 minutes, and it's one-on-one. It's, if you get knocked out, you get knocked out, and it's going to be, everybody sees it. So I think just, through some of our talks, man, so much appreciation for, what they do to prepare, and then you just really get a good perspective on that you're taking hits in MMA. There's nothing else like it. I think that's the top of the top of the
you get thrown in a cage and
shut
the door.
Real cage, shut the door and let's fight. It's a different level. It's a different level. So much respect for those guys.
All right, so I want to wrap up with you. I'm so grateful to have you on, especially my first person. If there was first person to have on, it had to be you. So I really appreciate you taking your time out early on a Sunday to do this with me. And I definitely would like to have you on. Just let the listeners know where they can reach you or find you on social media platforms.
Yeah, on Instagram it's Kenenth Farrow. I think Kenenth Farrow and the name pops up, but the actual handle is under 2 underscores Farrow, then another 2 underscores. And then on Twitter at Kenenth M Farrow. And those are the two I'm on the most.
Okay, because I'm gonna put them down in the links at the bottom, so people can look you up and research you and stuff like that.
Cool. Well, no, I definitely appreciate you having me on. I'm definitely honored to be, your first guest. I've learned so much from you and have so much respect for you and everything that you've gone through and, what you're doing. Like I said, you're definitely, one of the best people I've met in my life. Just from the standpoint of truly caring for the people that you work with and people you come across. We're like family, and no
Yes.
surprise on why you're as great as you are at what you do. So definitely honored to
Thank you,
be your
Ken.
first guest, Doc. I
I
appreciate you.
appreciate it. All right, so you guys can reach Ken on Instagram or Twitter, and I will put those at the bottom of the link on YouTube, and then we'll have them in the description once we get the podcast uploaded. All right,
Cool.
let me shut
Thanks,
this off.
Doc.
Thanks, Ken.